Another loss, and once again, it is another cold start to a season for the Denver Broncos. What's going on, everybody? My name is Branson Miles Smith. You can call me Miles if you want, and welcome to another edition of Crushin' It. It's another one of these post games where I just kind of rant about what went wrong, what happened. I wish it wasn't one where I had to rant about what went wrong, but unfortunately, it is. The Broncos give up a 43-yard field goal to the Chargers in the closing seconds to drop to 1 and 2. The defense was unable to hold on that final drive there. There were a modicum of issues there that I think we really need to get into for the Broncos, because the Broncos in that second half were in control for a little bit. They had that 7-point lead. It gave up that touchdown to Keenan Allen and that Chargers offense, which, credit to the Chargers, they're great. The Chargers are really good this year, and they are able to come out and kind of win these close games. Denver hasn't been able to do that yet. This is the second straight week they've lost on a last second field goal, just because, the defense kind of can't put anything together. But on the flip side, the offense really can't either. Now, the offense did have a couple of decent looking drives in this game, but there's a lot of problems right now with this Broncos offense. So let's go over some of these numbers real quick, and then we can kind of get into some more of this. So you have a 14 for 25, 153-yard, one touchdown game from Bo. Whatever, it's less than you want. Yet at this point, you need to understand that with Bo, Bo needs to be better. He missed a couple of throws. There was, I believe, early in the game, one that he missed to Kroll, just pulled it right. There was the couple of deep balls that he just barely overthrew. And on one hand, it hit the guys in the hands, but on the Sutton one, Sutton had to dive to make it hit his hands. And then Mims, it was still an overthrow, and I don't know if Mims just slowed down on that route or anything, but on that flea flicker, Bo's got to put some air on that. But at the same time, the offensive line was not great. And now I know this Chargers didn't have these whole heaping amount of sack numbers in this game. I believe they only managed 2 right there, yeah. But the Broncos offensive line did not play good in pass protection, and I don't know what it is. And there's a lot of things that I'm going to harp on about this offense, so I guess we can just start there. Offense wasn't really efficient. Before J.K. Dobbins hit that real big home run, hitter to get Denver into the red zone, he was 4 of -4 or 4 of -7. For some really stupid number, and then he was able to turn around his average from there. He gets that kind of swing pass that they classify as a rush, and he's able to scamper that into the end zone, and, Denver was starting to kind of look really good at that point. But, again, outside of some big plays there, Denver's running game was not doing a whole lot for whatever reason or another. The run game at points looked better than, especially the pass game, and I'll get to the pass game in a second. But Denver's offense was just completely out of sorts again. They had a couple of good drives against the Colts last week, but they weren't able to really do much of anything on the majority of them. Same story here. Denver comes out, they get 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals. You got 4 scoring drives out of how many did you punt on? Or whatever. No turnovers by the Broncos today, but a lot didn't go right here, and I'm going to get into some of that. So we just kind of look into that. 147 total passing yards, just lost on the sack. And my biggest issue, and I'm going to harp on the defense too, about this, but third down efficiency was not there at all. 2 for 13. That you're shooting less than 200 batting average on that. The Broncos offense was fucking abysmal on third down. And some of that probably comes to play calling. There's probably a bit of it too that just comes down to execution. You don't always want to just blame one thing or the other. The players got to execute at some point, whether it's O-line, whether it's quarterback, whether it's running back, whatever it is. But another part too is because of how many goddamn penalties the Broncos had, they kept themselves in awful situations, and we'll flip that onto the defense again here in a second, because we're not to that defensive part of the episode yet. But I mean, you punt 7 times, and part of that is because of costly, stupid penalties, and I can think of 3 right off the bat. You've got a offsides by Adam Troutman sometime in that second half. You got a face mask by Garrett Bowles on the very next play that turns, second and okay into second and 20, or whatever the fuck it was. There were a couple of really stupid defensive penalties throughout the game. And another thing that pissed me off as well, okay? Another thing that fucking pissed me off is on that first drive, there was this play to Quentin Johnson. It's like a 47-yard gain where Herbert's able to find him kind of in the middle. Couple of Broncos, and I mean like 4 or 5 Broncos converge on him. Nobody tackles him. There's no whistle. He's able to break away and get into the Broncos' red zone. That field goal ends up being the difference, and the defense needs to be held accountable for that because you got to play through the whistle. You got to play through the whistle. I don't care if you've got him, wrapped up. I don't care if he can still break out of there. The refs aren't going to call that until you've really held him there. So the defense drops the ball on that play, obviously. Broncos basically get, outplayed 2-1 in terms of total plays, 80-48. Chargers absolutely slaughter the time of possession, 36 minutes to 23, give or take, whatever. We'll round down kind of for the sake of it. Broncos only had it for 23 and a half minutes. No turnovers, obviously. A lot of really costly things it was the little things that cost this team the game. Especially offensively. It's miscues, it's lack of blocking on the O-line with, Bo Nix under pressure, which is crazy. I don't know what's up with this offensive line this year, man, but this O-line does not look nearly as good as it did last year, and that good O-line last year is the very thing that allowed Nix to flourish, to be able to sit there and kind of find his reads, and that's what any quarterback wants or needs. And so the problem becomes when you can't block up front. The Chargers were only bringing 4 throughout most of the game. They sent a couple of blitzes, but nothing too crazy for the most part. And so when they're rushing 4 and they're still making Nix, flush out, step up, do whatever, you got a problem on the offensive line, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Denver only managed 9 first downs in this game. 9 first downs. The Chargers had them 3-1 first downs gained. And then, like I said, the Broncos offense was 2 of 13 on third down, and that is completely unacceptable. The Broncos could not sustain a drive to save their life at all. And the 2 third down conversions they got, I think, were on that scoring drive in the first half. And I think he found Sutton a couple of times. So really, once the Chargers shut down Cortland Sutton, that was it. And that leads me into another problem, is one of these other receivers needs to step up. Troy Franklin had what a few people were calling a breakout game last week, and then he just follows it up with a bit of a dud. Didn't see any Pat Bryant, nothing from the tight ends. I think it was Lucas Kroll for most of the game. I don't think Ingram was playing at all. Troutman obviously costing the Broncos with penalties, so Troutman's a net negative at this point. And then Kroll had the one circus catch that got tipped out of Sutton's hands. So you've got no production coming from the tight end position. The guy that you signed isn't playing. You've got a middle linebacker on IR, which again I'll get to in a minute. And so it just leaves you in a spot where if your offense can't do anything, I mean, inevitably your defense is going to give out, because that second half Broncos offense, outside of the first drive of the half and then the one that they got set up with perfectly for a field goal, which I still think they should have found a way to get a touchdown out of that, but what do I know? I'm just a fan watching the game. To throw all of this in a bow, the Broncos offense was not good enough at all. The Broncos offense was terrible, and it's third downs that killed this team, and we're going to get into that in a second here. So now let's talk about the defense. It's another week where the secondary kind of gets sliced and diced, and now granted the Chargers were doing a lot of throwing, and the Broncos defense had their moments in the red zone. But it's kind of the story of last week. When it mattered, they couldn't come up and they couldn't make the plays that they needed. On that final drive, the Broncos defense got sliced and diced. Just straight up. It looked like they would play soft once, and then if they didn't play soft and they actually sent some guys, then the DBs weren't in position. Defense had a couple of stupid penalties as well. There was a rejuvenating one that was, I know Uwazurike gets called for a penalty, so another costly penalty from him. There's another one that I can think of, too, where you had a guy lined up in the neutral zone. Talanoa Hufunga's on unnecessary roughness call, slinging Keenan Allen to the ground after the play. Completely unnecessary. You can't do that. That's sloppy, and the coaches need to do something about that. And then we get into some of these numbers here. Now, the rush defense actually wasn't bad, okay? The rush defense played pretty well, all things considered. Najee Harris, now granted, was averaging 4.7 yards a carry before he was pulled out, which, I hope Najee's okay. I hope he's able to recover, and I hope he's able to keep doing good things. Omari and Hampton only goes 19 to 69. That's 3.1 per carry, or 3.6 per carry with a touchdown. And then, nobody else really ran the ball for the Chargers. Receiving-wise, Quentin Johnston, 7 of 93. Allen, 7 of 65. Hampton, 5 of 56. He had a real long catch and run in kind of a similar play to the Colts last week with Jonathan Taylor, where there was just nobody in contain assignment for the running back on a man coverage play where there's supposed to be a guy on that linebacker, so somebody just gets completely lost. Completely lost. And, the way that I look at this, too, is, like, you held them to 23 points, but right now the Broncos are playing a lot of bend, don't break, and the problem is you can only bend so much before that bend is what breaks you. And in this case, on that final drive, where you've got Denver giving up chunk plays, 7, 10, 9, whatever it is, the Chargers are going to carve you up and they're going to walk down to field goal range, which is exactly what they did. Exactly what they did. There were some positives, of course, obviously. There were more positive this week than there were last week. Broncos get their first pick of the year, which I don't know how that took until week 3, but Moss kind of deflects a ball into Brandon Jones's hands. Great play there. Broncos offense was unable to capitalize on that turnover. No momentum gained from it whatsoever, and so we're back to harping on the offense of you didn't do shit with multiple opportunities. Broncos defense did manage a good number of sacks. You had Benito with 2, you had Cooper with 1, JFM and DJ Jones got 1, so you're looking at 5 sacks right there. So the front 7 played fine, but the secondary was just getting absolutely fucking carved up. When I'm naming, the punter as, like, one of the top players, because Crawshaw, played a really pretty solid game. 3 of his punts went into the 20, punted 7 times, he netted 330 yards, had an average of 47.1. That's a pretty good punting performance. I shouldn't have to be saying that the punter had a good damn performance, because we won the game and we didn't need the punter, it's kind of where the problem becomes. And so, like, the Broncos defense definitely had their moments, but when it really mattered, and I don't want this to become a theme, but my God, this is kind of starting to become a theme here in these last 2 games, is when you need the Broncos defense at the end of a game, you are not able to rely on them. And I don't know if that is just a Vance Joseph thing right now. I don't know if that's just Vance Joseph getting outcoached on the other side by OC's head coach, whatever it is. But whatever the problem is the secondary is not playing up to par right now. Neither of your linebackers are really a strong suit in pass coverage. And so, if a team figures out that they can't run the ball, they're like, okay, well, let's just kind of take what they're giving us in the air. Case in point, the Broncos defense did not play good enough either, but, they played better than the Broncos offense. And the offense was kind of setting the defense up for failure, especially early on in that game. But again, the defense has plays that they need to make. And if you can't trust your defense to go out there on a final drive, then you are going to see the offense start making slightly more reckless decisions. You're going to see them start going for fourth downs in different spots of games where you wouldn't have necessarily had to, because you have this defense that can lock you down. No real notes on the special teams. They kind of gave up one big return to Darius Davis, but they were also able to force a turnover as well. Jonah Ellis was able to peanut punch that, and JL Skinner fell on it. That led to a Denver field goal in the second half. But, just another thing here that I need to get on the defense. You allow a team to go 8 for 17 on third down on you, and you expect not to lose? Like, the Denver Broncos defense just was not good in situational football. Like, any situation that demanded them to stand up to a task, 5 times out of 10, they weren't there for you. 8 times out of 17, they weren't there, which is just about 50%, really. And, I'm going to keep harping on that final drive because nobody looked ready for anything on that drive, and the Chargers just walked down and did whatever the hell they want. That's the end of it. Those are kind of the instant takeaways here. So, despite the fact you collect 5 sacks, you're +2 on the turnover differential there, and you still can't win, there are issues on this team that need figured out, and part of it needs to be situational football, especially on third downs and especially on those crucial last drives, and that's on both sides, too. The Broncos did have a chance to go down and put this game away, and Bo Nix and the offense just couldn't. And I don't know, really, if it's a Bo Nix thing right now, or I don't know if it's an offensive coordinator thing. I don't know if Davis Webb needs to be the one calling plays, but something needs to change for this Broncos team before you dig yourself into an irretrievable hole. The Broncos, I believe, do play the Bengals next week. So with Jake Browning at quarterback, you know, hopefully that becomes a chance for the Broncos to get right. Carson Wentz was able to, you know, put, it wasn't quite 48. They put like 41 or so because the defense got a pick 6 off of Jake Browning. So if there's a chance for the Broncos to rebound, it is next week on Monday night, September 29th. And I'll definitely see you guys then. I'll try and get a little bit more of a preview put together. I didn't get one this week. Just didn't have time between work and trying to move and everything. I don't know if you noticed, but like the back of the room is kind of empty for the most part. So with that being said, yeah, thank you all for watching another episode of Crushing It. My name has been Branson Miles Smith. And if you love the Broncos and if you hate how they're losing right now, go ahead and subscribe, like the video. I would very much appreciate that. And I will see you all next time. Peace.